Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads. Today I'm going to be doing my May wrap-up part 2, and this is going to be interesting because I have a lot of books that I've read in the last 2 weeks. This month has been really tough mentally, just work's busy and life stuff has been filling up a lot of time, and I feel like I just haven't been getting a lot of sleep or just yeah, I've been using books as a way to relax more than I usually do. And what I've been gravitating towards is young adult, middle grade mostly. And so I've read a lot this month because basically over the weekends I would binge read a lot of books in order to repair my brain so I can be functioning again Monday morning. So yeah, I have a lot I'm going to talk about. Can you see the stack? This stack right here are all the books I've read in the last 2 weeks alone. I don't even understand how I did that. So, yes, let's just jump in because I have a lot I need to talk about and I don't need a 45-minute video. So, if I end up rushing through a book and you want more thoughts or comments on it from me, definitely comment down below. I also always have links down below to the books that I talk about so you can check out a fuller synopsis because I might rush through the synopsis a little bit too. So yes, let's jump in. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is actually the one audiobook I listened to, and that is A Princess in Theory by Alyssa Cole. This is a romance novel, and guys, I loved this book. This was a complete surprise for me. I don't typically read romance novels, as you guys might be aware if you've been watching my channel for a little while. I've dabbled in it here and there, and I never really connected with romance novels, straightforward romance novels. But I feel like this year I have found sort of what I like in romance novels, so now I have a better idea of what to be picking up within the genre. I made a whole video about this over at Book Riot. I will link that up in the card so you can check that out if you're interested. But this was so fantastic. Alyssa Cole is a really great writer, and yeah, I just love this book so much. I've actually re-listened to parts of this book because there are parts that I really, really just thought were so sweet. Mostly the stuff that happens at the end. Spoiler alert, they get together. So once they start really falling for each other or recognizing their feelings for each other and things like that, those are the parts I've been re-listening to. So anyways, I should probably give you some sort of a synopsis. So the premise to this is really ridiculous sounding, but for some reason it really works for me. You are following this girl named Naledi who works as a grad student scientist. She keeps getting these emails saying that she's betrothed to this African prince, and she just assumes that they are spam emails, and so she deletes them. But it turns out that it's true. She was adopted, and so she doesn't really know too much about her history and her background. And so when she was a kid, she actually was betrothed to this prince, and so the prince ends up flying to America for various reasons and ends up connecting with her, but he doesn't introduce himself as this prince. He ends up going in and pretending like he's someone else. And so they, slowly get to know each other and things like that. And eventually everything gets revealed. Yeah, it's really great. I think part of the reason why I like this so much is because it reminded me so much of the movie The Prince and Me, which is not the best rom-com, but I watched it a lot. I think it used to be on Netflix. I don't know if it still is. And it was always one that I really enjoyed watching for some reason. But yeah, this book is just really well written. I'm really excited to read the second book in the series where you follow Naledi's friend Portia, just because Alyssa Cole just wrote this story so well. I've always just heard really, really good things about her books in general, but the only other ones I had known about before were her ones that take place during the Civil War, and I realized that I don't really like historical romances. I usually like contemporary ones. So yeah, I'm excited to see what else comes from this series, and I highly recommend it. If you are someone who needs to fulfill the Read Harder challenge of reading a romance by a person of color, this works for that, and this is actually one that I can recommend. Although I will say that there is sex in this book, so if you aren't okay with that, be forewarned, you can skip over them. It's not that hard to just skip over that section because I believe that they're all pretty much isolated to their own chapter, or it's the second half of the chapter, so you can just skip to the next chapter if you want and just not deal with that. But yeah, I really enjoyed this, and apparently now I'm going to become a romance reader, which I am 100% okay with. All right, now I'm just going to go in the order of the stack because it will make it easier for me. So the first book is another one I'm going to sort of rush through because I'm going to do an individual review on it, and that is My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyin Khan Braiwate. I probably totally mispronounced that and I apologize. One of the reasons why I don't want to talk too much about this is because this book doesn't come out until November, which is really unfortunate for everyone else, but also for me because I want to talk about this book with people. I ended up reading this whole thing in one day. I could not put it down. I mean, it's not very long. It's less than 300 pages, but still, this book was the definition of unputdownable. So this book takes place in Nigeria, and you are following these two sisters. There's Karetti, who is basically like the less liked, considered less beautiful sister. And then there's Ayula, who is the very beautiful sister. Like, everyone thinks she's beautiful. All the guys fall for her, things like that. When the story starts, Ayula has called Karetti because she has like stabbed her boyfriend. And she was saying that he was attacking her, and so she stabbed him out of self-defense. However, it turns out that this is the third time that she has stabbed one of her boyfriends, and so now Karetti is starting to become suspicious about her sister and the things happening there. And then Ayula ends up dating the guy that Karetti has a crush on, and so there are concerns around that. But the thing about this book is that there's a lot more happening here than just that synopsis. Like, I went into this book thinking it's just going to be like a basic like slasher book type of situation, but there's a lot of really interesting discussions in here about like gender and gender dynamics and relationships, and also just like family dynamics and things like that. And it's all in this like tiny little book, and it was so surprising, so well written. Definitely put this one on your radar for this fall. It's already, I know, going to be on my favorites of the year list. This was so fantastic. I honestly, and also it's just like beautiful cover. So yes, I'm going to do a full review on this one, but I probably won't post it until the fall. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'll post it next month. We'll see, because it doesn't come out till November, so I feel terrible like reviewing a book that other people don't get to pick up quite yet. Mark your calendars for November. Like, I think it comes around November 20th. That's what it says, so on the galley. So yeah, put this one on your radar. This was fantastic. All right, next I have The Fisherman by Chigozie Obioma. And this is one that I think was the unfortunate side effect of me not having the brain power for this book at the time that I read it. I like this book, and it's really well written. And I knew going into it that it has like this fable-like feel to it. But yeah, I think I just wasn't in the best brain space to consume this book at the time that I consumed it. So this is basically like a fable type story. It gets comparisons to like a Cain and Abel type of story, and you are seeing the lives of these four brothers, and you see it all, I believe, through the youngest, Benjamin, the whole time. So their father ends up leaving town for work, and the boys end up heading to the river to go fishing. And while they're there, this local man gives them this sort of prophecy that basically says that the oldest brother is going to be killed by one of his younger brothers. And so after that point, the oldest brother basically changes, and he becomes extremely paranoid and very just like aggressive towards everyone in his family, and his whole like manner changes, and things sort of unfold from there. I don't want to give too much of the story away. So yeah, like I said, this was a good book. I don't love this book as much as a lot of other people do. I think for me, a lot of the problems had to do with the fact that the first half of this book is really, really slow going. Like, there really is like this very slow build up, and then there's this sort of critical point that happens, and then everything from that critical point on is fantastic in my opinion. Like, that is all 5-star reading. The first half of the book, though, up until that critical point, I was reading it not really sure what was going on or what was happening. Like, you get a lot of these stories about these brothers, and I believe it's supposed to like add context to the situation, but to me personally, it didn't really do much. If you had cut a lot of the side stories and just had the main storyline, I would have been a lot happier personally, but I don't know if that's just like a personal preference thing or not. But the writing in here is really beautiful and really just compelling. Like, I finished this book despite the fact that like the first half I was having a little bit of a hard time connecting with the story. But again, once you hit that like critical point in the story, and if you've read the book, you know what I mean. From that point forward, I just thought it was amazing, and I was so glad that I finished the book. So if you are someone who reads this book, just be forewarned that the beginning is a slow start. And so in general, I'm of the opinion that you shouldn't finish books that you aren't enjoying. And so I don't want to say like if you're not enjoying the first half of this book to just push through, but I feel like if you're sort of like on the edge, if you're enjoying parts of it but you're not enjoying other parts of it, get to that sort of critical point and you'll know what it is when you get there. It really is right around the halfway point of this book, and then sort of keep going from there. And if at that point you don't like it, then that's a whole nother thing. But I think that the first half of this book requires some work. So just know that going into it if you end up picking this one up. All right, next up, I read Summer of the Big Bashi by Naomi Hirahara. Sorry. So this is a book I picked up for the Read or Dead podcast. We did an episode all about mysteries and thrillers written by either Asian or Asian American authors. And so I picked this one up. This one was an okay book. It takes place in California, and you are following this Japanese immigrant who lived in Hiroshima in 1945 when the bomb dropped. And then he ended up immigrating to the United States. And so now he works as like this like landscaper type of person in California. And one day someone comes to him asking if he knows the whereabouts of someone that he used to know in Hiroshima. And so the story is about basically like what happened back in Hiroshima, but also what happened to this person that he used to be friends with, and also like why are these people looking out for him or looking for him. And then also the main character starts to wonder if he might be in trouble as well. So there are a lot of things about this book that are good, and one of them is like the discussion of Hiroshima in general and the impact that it had on people, as well as like the impact that it has, and then like leaving your home and leaving for like a brand new country and things like that. One of the difficult parts about this book is that the Japanese characters in here, when they speak, it's written in a Japanese dialect. So personally, like that doesn't deter me from reading books, but it does like slow it down pretty significantly. And so that's sort of like a stumbling block personally when reading books that are written in dialect. I don't want to say like it's a con to the book, because obviously it provides a sort of context to the way that they would actually speak, but it does like slow down the plot line significantly, because like I have to actually slow down my reading to be able to pick up what they're saying. I would also say that the mystery itself is not like super strong, but I like the way that this book sort of explores Japanese immigrants, especially like Japanese immigrants who had to live through World War II and things like that, and live now in the United States, and just sort of the struggles of leaving your home and when your home is no longer your home and things like that. So yeah, I don't know if I would like super recommend this book, but I thought it was an interesting read, and I'm glad that I picked it up. And it's like one that I'd never heard anyone talk about before, but I found it at my library, and so I decided to give it a try. So, all right, next I have Amal Unbound by Aisha Saeed. So Aisha Saeed wrote Written in the Stars, which came out a couple of years ago, and I read, and I really enjoyed that. This one is a middle grade novel, and it's sort of like inspired by Malala Yousafzai's life. So in this story, you are following this young girl named Amal who loves going to school. She loves learning. She's hoping that one day she can become a teacher herself. But her mom gives birth to the fourth child in the family. And then after that, she ends up basically going through like postpartum depression. And so Amal has to stay home in order to take care of the household because she is the oldest in the house. And so she's really upset because she basically has to miss school. While she's home from school, an event occurs that sort of changes everything in her life. And I don't want to say like more than that because this isn't a very long book, but you sort of see how things unfold. So yeah, this is a middle grade novel. So like part of the flaw with this book is that it's very basic with its like morals and ideas. Like everything happens very like neatly and nicely and much better than I would say for a lot of people. But this book is really well written, and there are parts of this book that like made me want to cry, and there are parts of this book that I really enjoyed. Like I really enjoyed the character of Amal, and the things that she goes through are like real things that some Pakistani girls have to deal with, and even just like Pakistani families living in these very regimented smaller towns and dealing with very difficult / dangerous people. So yeah, if you are someone who enjoys middle grade novels, I would recommend this one a lot. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars, but it's really closer to like 3.5 stars. But just do know that it's very almost like fairy tale like in how like simple it seems. I think that if you are someone who typically reads a lot of middle grade, you sort of know what you are getting in terms of like reading level and complexities and things like that. So yeah, it's not the best book I've ever read, but I did enjoy the experience of reading it. All right, next I have Piecing Me Together by Renee Watson. This is one that I've seen a lot of people really enjoy. I actually read Renee Watson's previous book. I think it's called This Side of Me, which I liked, but I didn't love, and I feel the same way about this book. So in this one, you are following this girl named Jade. She lives in the poorer part of Portland, but she attends this private school that's mainly filled with like richer kids in Portland. So she is like this dark-skinned black girl, a little bit bigger, and her whole life she's been told that she needs to like take advantage of the opportunities that are given to her because a lot of the kids that like grow up in her neighborhood don't have these advantages. So she ends up getting signed up for a mentoring program, and she is paired with this other black girl who is an alumni of the school that she attends. But it turns out that they really don't have that much in common because her mentor comes from like this affluent black family. So the things I really liked about this book is that it explores not just like race issues, but it also deals with like class issues, which is really fantastic. It's really interesting to see sort of like how Jade develops her voice, figures out her point of view, figures out like what works for her and what doesn't, how there are like good things about like upper class stuff, but there are also like a lot of biases that she has to fight against, and she starts like speaking up about those biases to the people who she sees the bias in. There's a scene in here where she like goes to the mall and is sort of harassed by employees at the store because they think like she's trying to steal and things like that. And her friend doesn't believe that it actually happened or is trying to like play it off like it's not that big of a deal. And there are some really great conversations that happen in here about like how to handle situations like that. Like, what do you do if you are a young black girl trying to explain to her white friends like what those experiences are like and how to express how hurt you can feel when they don't empathize. And even just like if you're going in it from the other point of view, like trying to understand things from the other side and things like that. So yeah, like stuff like that is really, really well done. Again, I just found it to be like kind of easy and simple. Like everything always just like works out okay, which is not my favorite thing. But again, I think it's one of those books that's discussing really interesting things in a really unique way that isn't talked about enough in books, especially like young adult books, middle grade books. This one is sort of like borderline middle grade young adult. It's great that this book exists because this book needs to exist for other kids to be able to either A, understand a point of view that they don't typically get exposed to, or B, see themselves in a book and they don't typically get to see themselves in that way. So yeah, I like this book, and I definitely recommend it if you enjoy sort of like that younger young adult style. And I also just think it's really good to see the point of view of someone who's like completely different from you, as always. So yeah, I liked it. I think I also gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I'll definitely keep reading Renee Watson. She does really, really great things in terms of these contemporary books that discuss complex topics like race and class. All right, next I have what is probably one of my favorite reads of the month, if not one of my favorite reads of the year so far, and that is The Poet X by Elizabeth Acevedo. I listened to this on audio, and it was such a fantastic experience. I highly recommend doing that for this book if you have the opportunity. It's actually available on Hoopla, so if you use Hoopla through your local library, then I highly recommend going that route because it's only like 3 hours on audio. This is a young adult book written in verse, and I honestly think that's the best way to experience books written in verse. So in this story, you are following this character named Xiomara who lives in Harlem and is basically just trying to figure out herself and find her own voice. She is curvy and she is starting to get the attention of boys and men around her. She also really loves poetry, and she gets invited to join the school's slam poetry group, but she knows that she's not allowed to attend because the club meets at the same time that she is supposed to go to confirmation classes. Her mom is a devout Catholic, and she doesn't really know where she stands in terms of her faith. In fact, she might think that she's like atheist, but she doesn't know like how to deal with that or even how to express that to her mother, who is so devout. So she's struggling with that, and she's struggling to fit in. And there's also like a boy in her biology class, I believe it's biology, who she starts talking to and having a crush on, even though she knows that she's like not allowed to date and she can't really like hang out with him without getting in trouble and things like that. So yeah, I love this book so much. This book, I feel like, really captures what it's like growing up as a teen girl of color. I also really enjoyed the way that the questions about religion were expressed in here. Obviously, I'm a Christian. You probably could tell by the fact that I have a cross that I wear every day. But I think that the questions that she asks, even though she's coming at it from an I don't believe in this point of view, are very like real questions that everyone has to sort of ask themselves or ask of the world or whatever when you are believing or not. Like, and I think also, like, I grew up in a Christian house, and so I know some of the things that she had to go through, and just like figuring out your own point of view and realizing that your point of view doesn't necessarily match your parents' point of view, and how to handle that even. It's all just handled really, really well done. Like, it's not like disrespectful in any way or like rude or whatever. You could tell like this is just a young girl who is trying to figure out what she believes, figure out who she is, figure out what she wants out of life without the expectations of her parents or the world around her, or like what society tells her what she should and should not be. Like, she is just trying to figure out who she is, period. And I just thought that this book was beautiful. I highly, highly recommend it. I'm going to be buying my own copy of it for sure, because I'm going to want to like reread it and like mark it up and everything like that, because this is just so beautiful. I cannot recommend this highly enough. All right, next I have a very popular book here on BookTube, and that is An Ember in the Ashes by Sabaa Tahir. This book was sent to me by Penguin. I did not request it, but they sent this as well as a sequel over, and I didn't originally plan on reading the series at all, or at least I was planning on like waiting until the series was complete to check it out, or to see like what everyone's reaction was to it before checking it out, because a young adult fantasy is so hit or miss for me. But since I was sent the book, I decided to just give it a try, and I have very mixed feelings about it. So in this book, there is like the Martial Empire, which basically like rules everything and you can't defy it in any way whatsoever. And then there is like the Resistance, who is working to take down the Empire. You follow two characters in this book, and the chapters flip back and forth between the two characters. There is Leia. Her brother is captured by members of the Empire because he had been working with people in the Resistance. And then there's Elias, who is a soldier for the Empire, but you learn very early on that he has actually been planning to like run away and leave the Empire behind and things like that. So in terms of things I liked about this book, I think it's well written in the fact that it's really compelling, like plot wise. It keeps you hooked the whole time. I found everything with Leia really not that enjoyable. Everything with Elias reminds me so much of the Hunger Games, which people have complained about, but I'm saying that as like a strength to the book. I mean, I don't know if it is a strength. It's what kept me going. Like, I felt like I was reading parts of the Hunger Games again, except not, obviously. It's not as good as the Hunger Games, but it just gave me similar vibes, and so that's what kept me going through this book. But there are so many things in here that like don't work. Like, the world building in here is really not great. Like, it does not make sense, and it's totally possible that like in book 2 and book 3, which I think comes out this year, she continues to like build the world, but in this first book it like doesn't make any sense. Like, I don't understand this world at all, and I've seen lots of other people saying that as well. Like, at first I thought it was just me, and then I saw other good reviews about people saying like this world building's terrible, and I'm like, okay, it's not just me. There's also 2 love triangles in this book, so you know, the worst trope in YA books, twice as many. So yeah, that's really obnoxious and annoying, and I hated all of that. There's a girl in here named, I think her name's Helene. She is fantastic, and I would read an entire book from her point of view. And I think all the stuff happening in the Empire is so much more interesting than all the stuff happening with the Resistance. There's some stuff that happens with the Resistance which I was like completely saw coming for like a long time, and I was not surprised at all when the certain events unfolded towards the end of this book. But yeah, I'm gonna read the second book just because I'm like intrigued enough to keep going, but I don't really love this series yet. Maybe it'll change in book 2, we'll see. But yeah, the series isn't even done yet, so yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna keep going. Like I said, I'm gonna keep going, but I don't love these books. I don't hate them either. I don't think I would necessarily recommend them to people if you don't typically like young adult fantasy books. Like, this one isn't that much better than most of the others. Sorry, Sabaa Tahir. All right, final book that I read this month was The Best We Could Do by Tai Bu. This was beautiful and fantastic and just everything everyone's been saying it is. I actually got to see Tai Bu speak. She came to Chicago in April, I want to say, which is when I picked up this book. Yeah, this was so beautiful. This is a graphic memoir talking about Tai Bu's life, obviously, but also like her parents and her family history. So her family immigrated from Vietnam to the United States right in the middle of like the Vietnam War, and so they were basically refugees coming to the United States. And so it looks at Thai view, sort of struggling with her own history and her Vietnamese heritage and trying to just understand her past as well as trying to understand her parents and trying to even just like connect with them and get a relationship with them. What she knows about her family and their history and what she knows about Vietnam, and then sort of like the research that she's done to figure out sort of the context of what was happening and why things are happening. She talks a lot about like her dad's history and how that has shaped like who he is, and even like she talks about her mom's history and how that shapes who she has become. I think that this book is beautiful. It's a beautiful exploration of family life as well as like your personal history and how that shapes who you are and then impacts like your children and whatnot. It's also just like a really great book about what it's like for refugees and what it's like to live in a war-torn country, and like a country like Vietnam that was like occupied for so many years by different countries. And like, yeah, it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. The book is mainly in like black, whites, and like this brownish color. And like the illustrations are just really, really beautiful. There's a lot of like detailed work like this as well. It's a book that like you definitely need to take your time with because there's a lot of information happening in here, and like don't rush through the panels at all because there's so much details. And yeah, there's some really, really great stuff. Like here's a really fantastic spread. It's so great. So great. Highly, highly, highly recommend this one, especially if you are someone who likes graphic memoirs. If you haven't picked this one up yet, definitely put it on your list. All right, I did it. Those are all of the books I read in the second half of May. How did I read all those books? I don't even know. So leave a comment down below letting me know if you have any questions on any of these books, or if you read any of them yourself. You can definitely talk to me about them down in the comments below. Or if you don't have questions or comments about the books I read here, leave me a comment letting me know what your favorite reads were in the month of May. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.